All right, let's go ahead and get started. We're jumping into chapter 9, a new national identity. All right, so the Treaty of Ghent. Let's look at the Treaty of Ghent. The Treaty of Ghent ended the War of 1812. After the treaty, there was still conflict that existed. So what's going to happen is the United States and Great Britain are going to come down to the table and they pretty much set up an agreement to ensure that they don't have conflict going forward. They had to decide on how they were going to both use the Great Lakes. So in order to come to this agreement, they passed the Rush-Bagot Agreement. This is a treaty that resulted in compromise, which limited the Navy's power on the Great Lakes for both the United States and Great Britain. They pretty much agreed that it would be like an open area. The next law that we have to look at is, or the next event that we have to look at is the Convention of 1818. So what the Convention of 1818 does, it sets the borders between the United States and Canada at the 49-degree parallel latitude as far west as the Rocky Mountains. So what we're going to see is, this is when you begin to see the development of the border lines drawn as it is today. So the issue regarding lucrative fur trade in Oregon was one that basically was prompting conflict. So this was resolved by doing this. The treaty gave the United States fishing rights off parts of Newfoundland and Labrador coast. All right, so during this time also, the US is going to begin to try to gain Florida. So at the time and before, Spain had controlled Florida. But although Spain controlled Florida and Spain had forts in Florida, Spain allowed Native American tribes to exist in Florida independently. So that was a very powerful independent Seminole tribe. A very powerful independent tribe called the Seminole tribe, who was the most dominant tribe in Florida. The Seminoles were known for helping African Americans who looked to escape slavery from the South. If you think about it, most people know about the Underground Railroad, which African Americans looked to escape slavery traveling north to places like Canada and free places in the north, right? But if you lived in an area like Georgia, or if a slave lived in an area like Georgia, traveling to the north would be too far. So many of the Africans that ran away from or resisted slavery at this time, they looked to go south to Florida to live amongst the Seminole people. And the Seminole people was a strong, fierce, warring tribe. There was a general named Andrew Jackson, and that general was the person that led the war in Florida. So in April of 1818, troops led by Andrew Jackson invaded Florida to capture Seminole warriors. Andrew Jackson carried out several attacks against Spain as well as the Seminole forces without receiving direct orders from President Monroe. When you study more about these wars between the Seminoles and Andrew Jackson, the Seminoles pretty much annihilated the American forces. Andrew Jackson had to resort to Bush League tactics to actually make the Seminole forces surrender. What he eventually did, he eventually went to the Seminoles and basically said that they would meet for a treaty. When they were getting ready to meet for a treaty, he led an ambush. Eventually you have the Adams-Onis Treaty. In 1819, Spain and the United States signed the Adams-Onis Treaty. This allowed Spain to have East Florida. Allowed the United States to get East Florida from Spain. The US gave up its claims to Texas, and the US also agreed to pay $5 million to citizens who were suing Spain. So During this time, when you think about the history of Latin America, we're talking about areas related to Puerto Rico, areas related to the Dominican Republic, areas related like Cuba and all of these other areas. They were going through revolutionaries called like fights for independence. There was a guy that led these revolutions called Simon Bolivar. Bolivar pretty much encouraged many of the people of Latin America to stand up and fight Spain for their freedom so that they can establish their own independent nations. Therefore, eventually, Great Britain and the United States took an active role in encouraging other European powers to stay out of the fights for independence in Latin America. So on December 2nd, 1823, the United States issued the Monroe Doctrine, and it's an exclusive statement of American policy warning all European powers not to interfere with the Americas, not to come in the Western Hemisphere. There were four basic parts of the Monroe Doctrine, and here are the principles or tenets. Number one, the U.S. would not interfere in the affairs of European nations, so the United States would stay out of Europe. The United States would recognize and not interfere with European colonies that already existed in North and South America. So if those colonies existed, we'll stay away from it, leave it alone, not touch it. We wouldn't help or hurt or harm any of the revolutions. We stayed neutral. Number three, the Western Hemisphere was to be off limits to future colonization by any foreign powers. So no longer could European nations come to the Americas and colonize any areas in the Americas. Number four, the United States would consider any European powers attempt to colonize or interfere in the Western Hemisphere to be an act of hostility. So basically what that says is if a European nation comes to America and interacts, that act of hostility was like an act of war. Section 2, nationalism and sectionalism. Main ideas. So growing nationalism led to improvements in the nation's transportation system. The Missouri Compromise settled an important regional conflict. The outcome of the election of 1824 led to controversy. Nationalism. So what is nationalism? Nationalism is an extreme love or pride in one's country. That's nationalism. So there was a policy that promoted the American system. The American system was rooted by the Democratic Republicans, where they wanted to build the strong national economy to promote a sense of a unified country and reduce sectionalism, which basically resulted in North versus South or North versus South versus West conflicts. The American system was a series of measures intended to make the United States economically self-sufficient. Henry Clay from Kentucky was the American system's political leader. Henry Clay's push for an American system. So the first thing that the American system looked to do was create a national bank that would provide a single currency. So you would have one currency, like $1, one system of money. Money from protective tariffs would be used to build roads and canals. This was important because they wanted to generate infrastructure to transport goods easier throughout the nation. Roads, canals, and eventually railroad tracks would be built to join different parts of the nation. And that was all about economics. That was all about being able to move cotton, being able to move any type of goods from the east to the west or from the west to the east. Opposition to the American system. So the opposition to this bill was centered in the West and in the South because the bill would increase prices and it would hurt those sections of the country that was more dependent on agriculture. One of the first major projects that the American system produced was Cumberland Road. So Cumberland Road was the first road built by the federal government. It ran from Cumberland, Maryland to Wheeling, a town on the Ohio River in present-day West Virginia. The second thing that they created was the Erie Canal. So Americans wanted to build the Erie Canal so that we could travel easier, faster, and cheaper. So the construction of that canal began in 1817. The canal was built by immigrants, primarily immigrants who were Irish immigrants, but you also had British and German immigrants there too. These people dug the entire canal by hand. They used pretty primitive tools. A lot of people died building this canal. It was a feat of hard work, but once it was complete, it boosted our nation's economy because once again, it allowed goods to be shipped easier and faster. So from 1815 to 1829 is an era that's called the era of good feelings. And as you see, it is the era of good feelings because it was good feelings. It was a time of peace, pride, and progress. That was an emphasis on national unity. Also, the federal government's power and authority was strengthening, but not just by the Congress passing laws, but it was strengthened by two major court cases, which we'll get in later, which is McCulloch v. Maryland, as well as Gibbons versus Ogden. Both court cases show the increasing control of the national government over the decisions of the state government. Congress began to make more laws based on their loose interpretation of the Constitution, promoting federalism, which all of this stuff would be a precursor for the state rights versus the federal debate, which would also be a precursor for the Civil War. The issue of sectionalism. Although the country felt the growing sense of national pride, tensions began to occur between Northerners, Southerners, and Westerners. So remember, the North is a colder area that wasn't dependent upon producing crops. So in the North, you have major cities. You have the development of capitalism as well as the industrialized nation. In the South, you have more rural areas, which was based on farming, and they had a strong culture linked to slavery. As we are expanding westward, both the North and the South are fighting in regards to slavery. Should slavery be extended or ended? So going into that, slavery and its expansion, the most debated issue about sectionalism was linked to slavery. And I put slavery in bold. Many of the Northerners wanted to abolish slavery, or they wanted slavery to be ended. Most people don't understand why. It wasn't in regards to race. It was more in regards to fear. At the time, many of the Latin American countries were having bloody slave revolution. So the Africans who were held in slavery in Cuba, the Dominican, in a lot of Latin American places were rising up and killing the people who enslaved them. The Northerners feared this, so they didn't see much of anything to gain by keeping slavery around. Also, Northerners wanted to expand capitalism as well as industrialism. They were looking to expand industrialism. They wanted the country to be an industrialized nation where capitalism thrived instead of one of a rural nation that was dependent on farming. To prevent conflict, Congress worked to maintain an equal number of free and slave states in the Union. So you're going to see policies that promote this last bullet. In 1820, you have the Missouri Compromise, and the Missouri Compromise is a compromise that had arisen from Missouri's application of statehood in the Union. In order for there to continue to be a balance, what lawmakers created was this compromise. So it allowed Maine to join the Union as a free state, but it also allowed Missouri to enter the nation as a slave state. Now, what happened is they end up drawing a line which stated that slavery could not exist above the 3930 latitude parallel. Next, or kind of ending and capping it off, you have the election of 1824. The election of 1824 is when Andrew Jackson won the popular vote, but he didn't have enough electoral college votes. So because he didn't have enough electoral college votes, the House of Representatives got the opportunity to choose the winner. When they chose the winner, they chose John Quincy Adams as president. Jackson's supporter cried foul. They said that the election was a sham and that John Quincy Adams made a corrupt bargain with the Speaker of the House, Henry Clay. Those claims seem to be strengthened when President Adams announced that Speaker of the House, Henry Clay, would serve as his Secretary of State. To sum it all up, going back over it all, America began to expand westward. America solidified itself as a global powerhouse by defeating Great Britain in the War of 1812. We pushed the Monroe Doctrine, which kept foreign European nations outside of our hemisphere and outside of the situations that were going on in our hemisphere. Also, we had the era of good feelings where the federal government invested in the country's infrastructure and it's viewed as a good time. And then you had a growing sense of sectionalism, which was related to economics as well as slavery, which began the divide of the nation.